It is. It's a little bit of an experience. That's kind of really what we want to try to bring some intentionality to is there's great ancient philosophers that are saying, yes, you can see a red rose and call it a red rose, but what does it feel like to see the redness of the rose? And that's kind of how I feel with yoga, is that we have these ideas of what yoga is, and, you know, being present or living in the now, living in the moment kind of thing. But there's like a feeling with that, you know, there's a little bit of a different experience with that. And I think we all might see it come in waves if we're doing something we really enjoy or are focusing on something that completely takes our attention and captivates us. But what if you could create that experience on demand and you could choose, you know, that you could be drawn into the moment of what you're focusing on just on call whenever you want. And that can happen. It takes some training. This is why, like, a lot of the time I'll reference this kind of stuff as brain training, because we're in a society where multitasking is seen as this superior mentality, right? The more you can multitask, the more you can get done, the more efficient you are. And that's really kind of the name of the game in society right now, is like success, efficiency, goal accomplishment. But it's very debatable as to whether or not we're really accomplishing more by multitasking, just because our brain isn't built to operate that way. You know, it's really meant to focus on one thing fully, and it's processing so much information that we lose a lot of insight when we are trying to multitask. So that word presence, I appreciate you highlighting and bringing up. It's a big one. It's experiential one. Well, I love hearing your perspective on that. Yeah. Well, we'll use that as a cue to get started today. I appreciate you all sharing, and thank you, Cindy, for initiating some of that. You'll have to probably do it again as more people come back in person. But this week we're focusing on grounding. And so we'll do some poses that are grounding, and then also maybe testing that grounding mentality. And then the meditation is a grounding technique that's used in a type of trauma therapy called EMDR. Has anybody heard of EMDR? Yeah, have you? It's I don't remember the exact acronym for it, but I'll add it into the email I send out. And it has to do with rapid eye movement. And it's one of the most effective treatments for trauma. And the reason I highlight that is because that's more of like an extreme use case. But you could imagine if it's helpful for trauma, what would it do for people who maybe aren't dealing with severe trauma? Maybe people who are just dealing with a lot of stress, or maybe some sharper emotions at different times in their life. And so we'll explore a little bit of that grounding technique. Another thing I wanted to highlight is there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Has anybody heard of this book? The Body Keeps the Score. It's by a psychiatrist, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and he has done an incredible amount of research into trauma and how the body will actually hold on to trauma. And so as much as people want to mentally and cognitively move through trauma, it's very, very challenging unless you're integrating some sort of body work. And he has some videos, I'll again add this into the email. He has some videos on YouTube, so I'd recommend exploring those if this is a topic you're interested in. But he has come out and said there's two things that are the most effective for trauma management that he's come across. Does anyone want to guess what the first one is? No, I wish. No, but you're on the right track. Yoga. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. And the second one is EMDR. And I just found that to be super, super fascinating that he does a lot of research on psilocybin and MDMA, so psychedelic research in trauma management as well, which he has found to be pretty effective in a like scientific and professional setting. But he's a huge proponent of yoga and EMDR and all of the work that he's done and all the research that he's done. But his book is amazing. Highly recommend it. The Body Keeps the Score. SCORE. Yeah. So just want to give you that little nugget of motivation and encouragement as we move into our yoga class today, that there's a lot of wonderful research coming out about the power of a yoga practice, even if we don't feel it immediately in our own lives. But we'll go ahead and get started with our physical practice today, our asanas, and start sitting with the legs crossed. I'm sitting on a blanket stack here, and I have it kind of set up like that bicycle seat position. This is really meant for the sit bones to be supported, but the thighs are loose, and so they can start to actually fall to the floor. And whether or not that happens is going to depend on maybe those tight inner groins at times. But see if you can actively actually press your thighs down muscularly with the legs. So not with the hands as much, but really using the work of the thigh muscles to press the legs down. And with that grounding, right, you're connecting now just like a tree would root down to grow up. That's kind of what we want to think about a little bit today in our class is the thighs press down. Can the spine actually lift and grow from that support and that grounding? You can just rest your hands on your thighs, letting the elbows hang to the floor. As you take a nice, smooth, steady inhale, smooth, steady exhale, let go of any gripping or tension that might be held in your face or the eyes. You don't have to force the eyes closed. Just try to soften them and allow them to close as they feel comfortable to do so. You're focusing on the breath, feeling the rib cage and the lungs expand and contract as you inhale and exhale. Rhonda highlighted that lovely word presence. So as you really tune your mind into your body, into what's happening right here and right now, try to acknowledge what that feeling or experience of presence really is. The thoughts will always come and go, and our goal is not to eliminate them by any means, but instead to learn how to refocus them and bring them back to a point of focus of our choosing. So right now, being that breath, being the pressure of the thighs down with that lift of the spine up. As you lift all the way through the very top of your head, let your shoulders feel heavy towards the floor. Almost as if the sides of the neck and the tops of the shoulders could feel very soft and spacious. And you can slowly bring your hands together into Namaskar or prayer pose. And here's the palms rest against one another, the base of the wrists rest at the base of the rib cage. We'll start class by chanting 3 ohms together as a group. You're welcome to just sit back and listen if that's what you feel is best for yourself. Start with an inhale. Notice what that vibration of your voice is impacting on your body. Notice if there's any sensations that come up. Keeping the chest lifting. At the end of your next exhale, you can bring your chin down to the chest, surrendering the head to the heart, intellect to intuition. And bring your hands down to the thighs. And slowly lift your head and open the eyes. So we'll start just by doing a little side stretch today. I'll mirror you, so you can take your right hand down to the floor, reaching the left hand up and overhead. And think about how you can press the thighs down, really create that rooting in the sit bones as you lift and grow upwards, just like a tree. So there is this active reaching and searching down to the ground as if we were roots at the base of our body. Then there's also this lifting of the branches and the trunk. And as you maintain that upward stretch, maybe give a slight lean, but it really comes from that rooting of that left sit bone. And then coming back through center, we'll bring the left hand down, right arm up, pressing the thighs down, anchoring that right sit bone down as you reach up, lifting that whole side waist and side of the rib cage, and then adding a little bit of a lean over. Notice if you can inspire that lift from the rooting of the legs, from the rooting of the sit bone. And then we'll come back through center and move into a twist. Taking the left hand across, right hand behind you. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. You might find that your exhale has some space for you to twist a little bit deeper. Letting any tension in the eyes or the face soften. Releasing any gripping in the jaw or the lips. And then coming back through center, keeping the chest lifting nice and tall, we'll twist off to the left. Even if your hand is holding on to your thigh or your knee, try to encourage a downward pressure on the leg. So sometimes we'll pull on the leg and lift it up. See if you can actually press it down. Very nice. Notice if there's any space at your exhale to twist a little bit deeper. And then coming back through center, notice which leg is closest to you, and we're going to switch the crossing of the legs. And we'll do the same thing here. So leaning over to the right, pressing the thighs down as you lift that side rib up. And then moving into a little bit of a lean over to the side here. But have it come from that rooting of the thighs down, rooting of the sit bone down. And even though we are leaning to the side, see if you can keep that upward extension the whole time with it. Very nice. And coming back through center, moving off to the left. Rooting the sit bone and thighs down as you reach the right ribs up. And try not to lose that sensation as you lean slightly to the side. So there's still that upward direction, even if we're moving off to the side here. Coming back through center into a gentle twist, twisting off to the right. See if you can use your twist to open that left shoulder, that left side of the collarbone, or excuse me, the right side collarbone. Notice how spacious that feels. And then see if you can mimic it on the left shoulder. So notice that difference in the shoulders as we twist. It's very easy for that right shoulder that you're leading with to be a little bit more open. And see if you can mimic it on the left side. Nice. And then coming back through center, twisting off to the left. Rolling that left shoulder back, really opening up the collarbone. And see if you can mimic that spaciousness in the right side. And then coming back to center, sitting up nice and tall. So we're going to start with 2 blankets and a block today. We're going to lay into a supported back bend. And depending on how your shoulders and your upper back and your neck are feeling, we can make some adjustments to this. So I'll show you kind of the setup and then we can all do together. I like to unfold my blankets once from that shelf fold position. And I kind of stagger them about a good 6 to 8 inches. And then I'm going to start to roll that bottom blanket. And as they double up on each other, you'll get this thicker roll. Now again, if you have any tension in the shoulders, upper back, or neck, maybe it's best to just start with 1 blanket today. So you can use your discretion on what might be best for you and your body. We'll get other opportunities to practice this. You don't have to feel like you're needing to rush into a higher level of support. And then we'll have our block, which will support our head. And once you have more props maybe built up, it's always nice to have an extra blanket or even a bolster, but the blocks will do for today. And then I'll show so you can see kind of where these props go in relation to the body. And then we'll practice together. So I'm going to start with my knees bent, feet flat on the floor. And I'm actually coming and bringing my elbows down to the rolled blanket. And I want my elbows to be directly under my shoulders. From here, I'm just going to spread my elbows off to the side. And you'll feel that the rolled blanket is actually quite high towards the armpit area, a little bit closer to the upper back here. And then you can adjust the support under your head so that it feels nice and comfortable in the back of the skull. Then you'll just reach your arms off to the side, letting the shoulders almost hang and drape down to the floor from that rolled blanket here. Now, before we straighten the legs, we're going to press the feet down and actually tuck the tailbone to bring some length to the low back. Then we'll take the legs so that they're about hip width apart, resting here in a supported back bend. Just really absorbing the position of the props. And then to come up, I'm going to bend my knees. I'm just going to gently roll to my side here. You can shift the blankets out of the way and press yourself up. All right. So go ahead and lean back, elbows on the rolled blanket, the elbows directly underneath the shoulders. Then you'll spread the elbows off to the sides. And you should feel that rolled blanket come quite high up to the armpit here. We're aiming for that upper back area that has a little bit of a harder time bending and bringing in mobility. You can adjust the support under your head to make it as comfortable as possible. And then just reaching the hands off to the side with the palms facing the ceiling. And before you straighten the legs, press your feet down into the floor and try and tuck your tailbone down to your heels. Yes, creating some length in the low back. Then you can extend your legs out about hip width apart, toes pointing towards the ceiling. And taking a nice deep inhale and exhale. Letting go of everything, everywhere. You start to feel any aggravation in your low back or upper back, then you can go ahead and start to come out and we can readjust. And so great, you can actually start to push yourself a little bit more over that rolled blanket. There you go. As you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, notice if there's any tension holding on to the fronts of the shoulders. Really just use the breath to see if you can integrate some spaciousness there. As you inhale, you can think about filling that space across the collarbones, the front of the shoulder. And as you exhale, try to let go of any gripping. Initially, you may or may not feel any of this release. Sometimes the muscles really like to hold on. They feel it's their duty to do this. And so it can take some time. And with every breath, notice if there's that expansion happening in the side waists. Almost starts to feel as though your whole upper body is breathing with you. As if that breath can almost radiate beyond just the lungs. As you notice where your breath is flowing in your body, see if you can breathe into the back of the rib cage. As you inhale and exhale, focusing your attention to that space across the upper back. Might not be as sensational, might not be as noticeable. But see if you can really tune that energy into the upper back, into the back ribs. During these last few breath cycles, observe your body as an entire unit. Notice if there's anywhere in particular that needs your attention, that feels tight or stiff, or maybe even dull. Use your breath to awaken that space. You can use your breath to maybe even expand or soften those spaces. As your mind does this, your mind is really harmonizing with your body, trying to get to know it a little bit more. Often the mind is able to accomplish so much and move so much faster than our body can. And so as we take these moments to really tune in, try to see the world through our body's eyes or our body's experience, can harmonize those pieces of us a little bit more. And tune your mind into your heart. Notice if you can feel your heart beat, or even just focusing on that space where the heart rests in your body. Gently deepening your inhale and exhale, keeping your focus on your heart. Although this practice seems so very simple, it is a practice called mind-heart coherence. There's been a lot of studies done on how this mind-heart coherence can encourage a lot of healing in the body. Bring your attention to your skin. And we'll slowly start to bend the knees, bringing the feet flat to the floor. You can roll to your side and press the blanket roll out of the way before pressing yourself up to sit. And just take a moment in a comfortable seated posture, thinking about that impression that the rolled blankets had on you. If you could recreate that positioning, what would it feel like? Now we have a little different relationship with gravity here, so it might feel a little different. But imagine as if you could be rolling and curling your upper back over that rolled blanket stack. Imagine as if the shoulders could fall to the wall behind you. There's a little bit more muscular effort needed to recreate this experience. Let's see if you can do all of this with the face and the eyes soft, mind soft. And then we'll go ahead and open the eyes. You can shift your blankets off to the side. We're going to come to a standing position. You can bring your blocks just to the back edge of the mat. We'll get to them here in a few. We're going to start standing in Tadasana with the feet hip-width apart initially. And place the hands on the hips. And as you look down at your feet, imagine that there was a line that you could draw from your middle toe to the center of the heel. We even have some lines on the floorboards here. So if you even wanted to take a moment and line up that center of the heel with the middle toe, sometimes our perception can be a little bit different than the actuality of things. And then with the hands on the hips, draw the elbows back to the wall behind you. Notice how those upper outer corners of the chest start to get nice and broad here. And then try to pull the elbows down to the floor, as if you could pull the shoulders down the back with that effort of the arms. Try to maintain that attentiveness in the upper body as you reach your hands down alongside the hips. We're going to very slowly take the arms up and overhead, and noticing if those shoulders want to come up with us, and instead drawing them back to the spine and down away from the ears. Imagining as if your feet were roller skates here. You could balance on them from the inner heel to the outer heel, big toe ball mound to the pinky toe ball mound. And with that rooting of the feet down, try to tuck your tailbone down to the floor. And here are those roots of the trees. As your tailbone tucks down to the floor, lift the chest and spine up. Just like a tree would grow from that support of the lower body. And then slowly bring the hands down alongside the hips. We're going to practice Baddha-Anguliasana, or bound finger pose. So lacing the fingers together, pressing the palms away, reaching the arms up and overhead. It's okay if the arms don't go all the way up and overhead. Be mindful of the shoulders. But again, try to recreate that experience in the upper back. The shoulder blades pull into the spine. See if you can also pull them down the back. There's some nice spaciousness between the shoulders and the ears. As the tailbone roots down to the floor, reaching the spine and the chest up as if it could grow from that grounding. And then you'll bring your hands back down in front of you. Notice which pinky is on the loose end. Switching the lacing of the fingers for pressing the palms out and up and overhead. And Brianna, if this is aggravating, you can just keep the hands forward here, okay? Yeah, if there's any aggravation happening in the upper body, you can bring the hands lower and still do some of this work. Feeling the sides of the rib cage expand with the face, the lips, and the jaw soft. And then we'll bring the hands back down, standing nice and tall here. So we're going to move back down to our mat and practice our cat-cow before coming into downward dog. But I want to show something really quick just because we're going to do something a little bit different today. So normally in cat-cow, you know, there's this head movement that we're also taking along with it. Just to start today, we're going to keep the head in a neutral place. And I really want you to focus on what the spine, the pelvis, and the upper back are doing. So here you can see that tailbone is tucking down. I'm really rounding my upper back. But when I come into this cow position, notice how my shoulder blades squeeze into the back and my tailbone lifts up. So there's quite a bit of movement happening in my upper back. Do you guys kind of see that dramatic shifting of the shoulder blades happening here? Yeah. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to come into downward facing dog, and we're going to try and integrate that. So knees are going to bend in towards the chest. And we're going to try and see if we can do cat-cow now in a little bit of a different position with the legs and the arms. And we'll try and keep that cow position, straighten the legs. I'm not too worried about the heels. If you can keep the sit bones lifting, then you're welcome to bring the heels down. And then we'll come down to rest in Adho Mukha Virasana here. And you can let the arms be soft too. Okay? Are there any questions coming up for you guys? No? All right. Let's go ahead and try in that cat-cow position. So wrists under the shoulders, knees under the hips. If it's comfortable on your ankles, you can point the toes back. Really get that whole front of the shin pressing down. There you go. And we're going to keep the head in a neutral position and really just focus on the upper back and the tailbone. So let's start by rounding the back here, tucking the tailbone down. Feel how those shoulder blades spread away from the spine here. Now moving into that cow position, squeeze the shoulder blades together. Tailbone lifts up towards the ceiling. You'll feel your belly move down to the floor. Belly will start to descend. But really squeeze the shoulder blades in towards each other. And then shifting again, shoulders spread, rounding the upper back, tucking the tailbone down. So do this 3 more times at your own pace. You can start to integrate the breath. Exhaling as the back rounds, inhaling as you lift the tailbone up and squeeze the shoulder blades together. And try to pick up on those sensations really in the hips with the tailbone tucking and that squeezing and contracting of the shoulder blades. And then once you've done your 3 cycles, you can curl the toes under and we'll come up into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And bend your knees into your chest. So now practice downward or practice cat-cow again. A little bit of a different position. Let's see if you can round the back, tuck the tailbone, spread the shoulder blades, and then squeeze the shoulder blades, lift the sit bones up. Nice, Gray. And do this 2 or 3 times. And then you're gonna hold that cow position. So tailbone lifts up, shoulder blades squeeze together, straighten the legs with the sit bones lifting up towards the ceiling. Don't worry about the heels today, right now. Get those sit bones up, shoulder blades squeezing on the back. Legs nice and straight. And if you can keep the sit bones lifted, you can start to bring the heels down to the floor. But notice how those hips want to drop. and then come down to rest, taking the knees wide, toes together, leaning forward into downward facing hero's pose, Adho Mukha Virasana. And we'll try that just one more time, moving straight into downward facing dog. So you'll come forward, hands are slightly forward from the shoulders, knees are slightly back from the hips, curling the toes under. You can practice 2 or 3 cat-cow positions with your spine, your shoulders, with your pelvis. With those knees deeply bent, try to get the sit bones lifting, shoulder blades squeezing in, and then let the head hang. Let the back of the neck be long. You can start to straighten the legs with the heels lifted, tailbone, sit bones lifting up towards the sky, and slowly bringing the heels down. Notice if the hips drop. See if you can still keep that lifting of the sit bones up. And then coming down to rest, knees wide, toes together, sitting back on the heels, letting the head and the arms soften, rest on the floor. And then you'll start to press yourself up to stand. You can curl the toes under and you can just come up. Sometimes it's easier to come up from this Uttanasana here, bending forward and coming up. And if you're noticing any strain in the hips and the low back, you can always keep that bend in the knees and then come up. Now we're going to move back into our Tadasana that we were practicing, mountain pose. Mountain pose is a little bit different because we're kind of doing a little bit of cat, a little bit of cow. So I'm going to turn sideways. And here in Tadasana, the tailbone is going to tuck down. So it's the difference between this versus this. Right? If I was doing the cow pose, I'd look something like this. Little cat pose, rounding the back like this. Well, I want to keep this cat part of the body. Lower body is tucking. But now I'm squeezing those shoulder blades together with a little combination of both happening here. Sometimes it's helpful to have the hands on the hips, get the shoulders active and moving onto the back of the body. And as you take a nice deep exhale, belly button comes into the spine, little core contraction here. It's not necessarily this gripping of the abdomen, but see if you can use your exhale to really create that spaciousness where the belly button draws in. And then we'll slowly take the arms up and overhead one more time. That tuck of the tailbone coupled with that drawing of the shoulder blades onto the back of the body. You feel your weight into your heels and that tailbone tucking downward. Try to lift the chest up, lift the side waists up. Good. And if you feel comfortable doing so, you can even bring the hands together. And then slowly bringing the hands back down, standing nice and tall in Tadasana. So you can just go ahead and relax the body. I'm gonna show this next series of poses because we'll go to about 3 different poses and you'll have an idea of where we're headed. So we have the blocks at the back of the mat now. I'm gonna step and take my feet wide as my wrists are when I'm reaching my wrists away from the shoulders. You can just watch for a second. I'm gonna turn my back foot in this case my left foot, my right foot out 90 degrees. You'll see that the inner edge of the right foot draws a line to the arch of the back foot here. We're gonna come into Virabhadrasana 2. So I'm bending that knee, so my hips are forward, my chest is forward, and essentially I'm practicing mountain pose from the waist up. So there's still that tuck of the tailbone happening, that drawing back of the shoulders. Then we're gonna lean over into Utthita Parshva Konasana. I'm really using my forearm on my thigh here but there's a lot of strength needed in the legs to do this. From this position, we're going to move into Utthita Trikonasana. So I'm just straightening that leg. I'm pressing my forearm down to lift this chest up and towards the ceiling. You can keep the hand on the hip, really focus on that rotation of the chest. And if it feels comfortable for you to do so, you can even reach your arm up and overhead. But first prioritize getting that turn in the chest, and then we'll take the hand up. Now to come out, we're gonna reverse engineer it. So Utthita Parjva Konasana. I'm keeping the legs and pulling myself back into Virabhadrasana 2 before straightening toes forward, and we'll do the other side. All right, any questions coming up? No? All righty. So you can jump or step the feet wide. I'm gonna step because my hips right now are a little achy, but you can jump for energy. It also creates some lubrication in the joints, and reaching the hands out from the shoulders. Go ahead and start by turning the right toes out. Remember, I'm mirroring you, and left toes in. Now think about that mountain pose we just practiced. That tucking of the tailbone with that pulling of the shoulder blades onto the back of the body. And as you slowly bend your right knee, knee will come directly over the ankle. Sky, you could probably widen your stance a little bit. Eventually the thigh will come parallel to the floor with the knee over the ankle. Now notice what's happening in the spine. Is the chest leaning over that thigh already? Can you use that tuck of the tailbone to really lift the chest up and the spine up? Beautiful. We're gonna lean over to our right side. Forearm is coming to the thigh there as you reach the left fingertips up towards the ceiling. As you press your feet down into the floor, imagine as if you could slide them together. Notice there's a difference between pushing the feet apart, but really see if you can slide those feet in together with that muscular effort of the thighs. And then slowly straightening that right leg. And bring your left hand to your hip. Really focus on opening that left shoulder towards the ceiling, turning the entire rib cage up towards the ceiling here. Now there's some pressure happening on your right shoulder, right? Because that's where some of our weight is from our upper body. But see if you can roll that right shoulder to the spine. Nice, Rihanna. And if you're feeling comfortable doing so, you can take your gaze up to the ceiling, maybe even reaching those left fingertips up to the ceiling. As the feet press down and slide together, feel that left arm lifting you as if it was making your upper body lighter. Good. We're gonna reverse engineer. You can take the gaze forward, bending that right knee, Utthita Parjva Konasana. So it can be helpful to open the chest, to have the hand out from the shoulder, great for shoulder tension. The traditional pose does have the arm alongside the ear here. And as you press into your outer left heel, feel that length all the way to your fingertips. Kind of like that sideways stretch we practiced at the beginning of class. Now feet press down, feet slide together, and we're pulling ourselves back into Virabhadrasana 2. Notice if that leg came unbent. And then straightening the leg, toes forward, and you can go ahead and heel toe step the feet together. Standing nice and tall in Tadasana. And let the arms loose, let the body loose. And we'll do the other side. So jump or step the feet wide. So you reach your arms out from the shoulders. Turn your right toes in. Pivoting on that left heel, left toes out. And then Virabhadrasana 2. Bending the left knee. Notice if your body's already leaning into that next pose. See if you can tuck the tailbone down, lift the spine up straight. Really happening here with that bent leg. We want to create some spaciousness there even. And then bending over into Utthita Parjva Konasana. Notice what's happening in that left shoulder. And already using that weight to collapse towards the ear. Good, great. See if you can pull it away from the ear to the back of the body. And then we'll start to straighten that left leg. Utthita Trikonasana. Go ahead and bring your hand on your right hip for a moment. Notice what's happening in the shoulders. And you keep that tucking of the tailbone while the shoulders squeeze into the spine. Taking the bottom ribs forward, top ribs back to the wall behind you, maybe even looking up to the ceiling. And if you feel comfortable doing so, you can reach the arm up and overhead. Beautiful. Now we're going to reverse engineer. Utthita Konasana, pressing the feet down, sliding them together. Now keep the legs in this position here as you pull yourself up. Beautiful. Nice. And then coming to stand, toes point forward, heel toe step the feet together, standing in Tadasana. So we're going to use that series and integrate one more pose into that. So I'm going to demonstrate really quickly and then we'll do together. We'll start coming into it just as we had practiced. And so you can just watch for a moment. This time, we're going to come from this position. We're going to grab our block. I'm going to step my back foot in and I'm taking my block forward. It's not totally in line with my foot. It's actually back to the wall behind me a little bit more. And I'm going to start to shift my weight. Now, if you're feeling unbalanced, looking at the floor can be helpful, but ultimately we want our body to start opening up to the ceiling. And so if you can, take the gaze forward, Ardha Chandrasana. Maybe you'll even take the gaze up, although that's not something that has to happen. And then I'm big, deep step back here. Coming back through, Utthita Konasana, Virabhadrasana 2, and up, okay? And if you're feeling unbalanced today, you don't have to even lift that back foot. You can just practice this depth of the hip here. Maybe you're even here. This is a little bit more balancing because your center of gravity is lower to the floor and you really get that thigh working, okay? And if you feel really unbalanced, we can use the wall. Very, very helpful if you're feeling low energy as well, okay? Are there any questions coming up? All right, let's go ahead and do it. So you'll jump or step your feet wide. Let's turn the left toes in, right toes out. Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2 pose. Utthita Konasana, extended side angle stretch. Then you can bring your left hand on your hip here. Go ahead and grab your block. Now we're going to start by bringing that back foot in slightly, then reaching the block forward. And now we're going to shift our weight. Yeah, you're a tall kid, Gray. You might need to shift your mat. Yeah. Very good. So looking at the floor can help with balance, but then try to look forward and imagine, just find a spot you can really stare at and keep your gaze on. And we want the hips to open up towards the ceiling, chest to open up towards the ceiling. Nice. You might even take your gaze up to the ceiling. And see if you can lift your back leg as high as your hip. And if you feel comfortable, reaching the left arm up and overhead. Beautiful. And then we'll come back down, hand on the hip, deep bend in that right knee, big step back, Utthita Konasana. Good. Virabhadrasana 2. And legs straight, toes forward. Nice. Hands on the hips. We're just going to move straight into the other side. So turning the right toes in, left toes out. Hands reach from the shoulders. Virabhadrasana 2. Utthita Konasana. Right hand comes to the hip. Grab your block. We're gonna step that back foot in first, then reach the block forward. And then lifting that back leg up. Think about opening the hips, opening the shoulders, all the way up to the ceiling. Nice. Eyes soft, face soft. Now, even if your gaze is forward or maybe even up towards the ceiling, try to keep your brain in your feet, in your hand that's holding you up. And if you feel comfortable doing so, you can even reach the arm up and overhead. Beautiful. And then bending that knee deeply, big step back. Utthita Parshva Konasana. Virabhadrasana 2. And legs straight, toes forward, heel toe, step the feet together. Standing in Tadasana. Nice deep inhale, deep exhale. You can go ahead and bring your blocks to the front area of your mat. And you're going to take the legs wide for Prasarita, Padottanasana. Expanded, intense stretch of the foot as it translates from Sanskrit. So we can do this together. We practiced this in our last class, taking the feet wide, toes point forward, hands on the hips. You squeeze the elbows back, chest is nice and lifted, and you'll bend forward at the hips. Notice if those shoulders are already dropping. As you bring your hands down to the blocks, see if you can keep those shoulder blades squeezing together, just like in our cat-cow practice. And then you'll walk your hands forward, nice and long back. So it almost creates a slide from your hips to your hands. But your weight is in your heels. Taking a nice deep inhale, nice deep exhale, let the head hang. Now you're going to bring your blocks back and we're going to walk them between our ankles. So they're still shoulder width apart. And all I'm doing is walking them back. And you'll bend the elbows and lean forward. Some of you guys can even bring your hands down to the floor, letting the head hang, letting the whole spine hang. You can round the back here. If you feel comfortable doing so, you can even grab a hold of the ankles. Notice if there's any gripping in the back of the neck. Good guy. Smooth, steady inhales, smooth, steady exhales. And then you'll bring your hands underneath your shoulders, so more of that tabletop back, called a concave back. And you'll take your gaze forward. You can heel toe step the feet together a little bit so that the legs are hip width apart. Grab onto your elbows and let the head and the spine hang down to the floor. A little bend in the knees, hands on the hips. You'll slowly come up. Take your time if you feel any dizziness or lightheadedness. Doesn't have to be fast. And you can shift your blocks off to the side. We're going to practice our four-footed pose and then move into bridge pose. So we can practice some variations. Also, if this is I know some people had mentioned some tension in their shoulders, so I'll just do a quick brief demonstration showing how we'll integrate the props in this practice. So we'll use our strap today. I'm going to take my strap I have my feet flat on the floor with my knees bent. I'm going to loop that strap around my ankles here. As I hold on to the strap, I'm going to take a moment to open up the chest, but I want it to be a little more dramatic even. Since I am trying to move on to the tops of my shoulders, I'm even going to shift from side to side and tuck those shoulders underneath me. There's a pretty big difference between this and this, right? Really actively getting those shoulders tucked underneath. Then from here, I can hold on to the strap, pressing the feet down and lifting the hips up. You might even find that there's some space to tuck the shoulders a little bit more. Again, really coming onto the tops of the shoulders here for Chatushpadasana, four-footed pose. We'll hold that for a few breaths, and then we'll come down, let go of the strap, and bridge pose will integrate the block. You can practice with the block on the low setting or the medium height. I really only recommend the tall height if this is something that you've practiced quite a bit before, just to get the body used to it. So I'll again come into my Chatushpadasana, four-footed pose by tucking the shoulders underneath, lifting the hips up, and again, tucking the shoulders underneath before placing the block. And you can decide which height is best for you. And the block will really be kind of across the middle of the buttocks. So it's lower than the sacrum, it's more in line with the tailbone, and then we'll straighten the legs about as wide as the mat here. I recommend keeping the legs a little bit active, but the buttocks lets loose. So if you feel this tightening of the buttocks, we don't necessarily want that. We want the buttocks to be soft. But toes point up, heels press down. And to come out, we'll bend the knees, lift the hips up, and we'll move into our bound angle pose. So you might have to redo the strap, right? Maybe you pull the strap out. Again, hooking onto the ankles. Now I'm gonna walk my feet to face each other and take the knees wide. And sometimes it's helpful to have that support of the hands under the hips, or if you want, you can just let it go and have the palms facing the ceiling here, okay? And then you can bring the knees together, roll to the side. We'll take a quick restroom break if you need, and then move into Shavasana in our meditation time. Alrighty? Any questions coming up about these poses? No? All right, let's go ahead and do. So you'll lay down with the feet flat on the floor, knees bent. You'll have your strap and your block nearby. Then you can come back to your elbows, spread the elbows, and lie down on the floor. You can bring your feet as close to your hips as your knees will allow, and as long as your knees are comfortable here. Then go ahead and grab your strap, and you're gonna swing it around down to your ankles. And you're gonna walk your hands down that strap. So the arms are straight here. You're walking your hands basically towards your ankles. And take a moment to tuck the shoulders underneath you. So not only are we spreading those collarbones, but you're actively gonna actually shift from side to side to tuck your shoulders underneath you. Very nice. And then whenever you're ready, you can press the feet down, lift the hips up. And notice as you lift those hips up that there's actually some space to come onto the tops of the shoulders even more. So again, tuck the shoulders underneath you one at a time. Inner arm turns up, outer arm turns down. And then you'll bring your hips down to rest. And so Brianna, you can take your heels a little bit farther away from your hips actually, even a little bit more, because your knees are kind of going over your toes, and it can put a little extra strain on the knee joints. That's what we're looking to help. And we'll do one more time, tucking the shoulders underneath. As you press your feet down, lift your hips up. And as the hips are lifting up, imagine tucking the tailbone all the way up to the ceiling. And one more time, tuck the shoulders underneath you. Eyes soft, face soft. Feel how your feet are pressing down and how your upper arms are pressing down to lift your back ribs up off the floor. Beautiful. And then you'll come down to rest. Just letting go of any gripping in the shoulders and the legs, and rest your knees on one another. Last week, I kind of mentioned that muscle relaxation technique. So you go through this deep contraction, right? There's all of this effort happening, and then you let it go. And this can be really helpful with emotional regulation. They'll use this in like couples therapy sessions and stuff, because that's when you need the most emotional regulation. So now we're going to move into Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, which is bridge pose. So from here, you can actually go ahead and let go of the strap. And we're just going to use the pressure of our arms and the pressure of our feet to get us back into that four-footed pose. So as you tuck the shoulders underneath you, go ahead and lift your hips up. Tuck the shoulders once more, and then you can grab your block, place it on the low or the medium height. Again, you're welcome to try the high heights, but I only recommend it if this is something that you've practiced quite a bit before. And you're going to have that block going across your pelvis. So I think, Sky, you'll turn, yep, there you go. And they'll be in the middle of the buttocks. So closer to the tailbone, not on the sacrum. It looks like it. Go ahead and straighten one leg at a time, and you'll feel that straightening of the leg brings a little bit more balance, right? Sometimes it feels like you're going to slip onto your hips will slip off towards your shoulders. But as you straighten the legs, press the heels down, toes point up towards the ceiling. So there's that slight flexion happening in the feet here, but notice if the buttocks is gripping, and see if you can let go of that gripping of the buttocks. And with the eyes and the face soft, notice if there's any tension in the front of the throat, jaw, or lips. Take a moment to reflect on what the mind has been doing. So we started class with a little bit of a slower pace, and then we were doing some poses with a little more physical exertion, and now we've slowed down again. How has that affected the patterns of the mind? As you use the pose and use your breath, really focus on the body. Notice how as you focus on the breath, there's this movement of the inhale and exhale. But see if you can radiate that awareness to the rest of your body. As you breathe, what other sensations are coming up in your abdomen, in the hips, in the legs? As you inhale and exhale, notice how that might affect the shoulders, the throat, or the face. And then to come out of bridge pose, you'll bring your feet flat to the floor with the knees bent. Lift your hips up, remove the block, and you'll bring your hips back down to the floor. We'll shift into bound angle pose, Baddha Konasana. You can grab your strap, loop it around your ankles once the knees are bent. Then you'll walk your feet together and take the knees wide. You can decide if it's helpful to have those hands and wrists underneath the hips. That can alleviate achy hips. It can also help with that pretty wonderful stretch on the inner thighs. which sometimes can be very intense and distracting. As you exhale, let go of any tension in the face, in the eyes, lips, or jaw. You'll slowly bring your knees together and straighten the legs, just to stretch out before we transition into the next part of the class. Letting go of everything, everywhere for a moment. We're going to start to shift into Shavasana, or a corpse pose, in a guided meditation. You can also use this time to use the restroom, but you want to have enough support around you so that you can feel quite comfortable for this meditation. At a minimum, have a blanket for underneath your head. You can even place some blankets along the sides of the hips or underneath the knees, depending on the type of support your body needs today. Having some rolled blankets on the outer hips can help with any achy hips. Little support underneath the knees can help with any tension or achiness in the low back. You can also, do you? There's some bolsters in that side room. Would you like me to get you one? Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Definitely can use some extra support. Wow, look at you. You want to place it? You got it? Yep. I kind of mentioned in the beginning of class about the bolsters being really helpful extra tool. So I'd maybe put that block on a little bit lower level when you're after some time. If that's comfortable for you with the block that high, you can leave it there for a little bit. Yeah, but for longer periods of time, that might be a little more comfortable. You want one too? Feel like you're missing out when two people next to you get them. I kind of mentioned in the beginning of class how helpful a bolster is. They are a little bit pricier, but I think well worth the investment. as you lay down, just taking a little inventory, and we'll just use these next few moments to make sure the body's comfortable, really settle in, absorb class. Shavasana or corpse pose is a great time to check in, take an inventory of your body, reflecting on whether or not there were specific sensations at the beginning of class, and just checking in to see how they're doing now. Shavasana is a time to simply be an observer of your body. knowing that your body naturally has its own rhythm that you don't need to control or influence. Really, we turn into a witness of that harmony that naturally happens. The floor and the props simply become tools for you to fully let go of everything, everywhere. Today, we're going to spend some time in a grounding visualization meditation. As your attention comes to your body, notice if any tension has risen. As you exhale, soften any gripping into the floor, really feeling your weight supported by the ground underneath you. Softening any tension in the hips, in the upper back. Notice if there's any gripping in the feet or the legs, in the arms or the wrists. Softening any tension in the tops of the shoulders, the sides of the neck. Feeling all the features of the face relaxing. Letting go of that space between the brows, the lips, in the jaw. As you bring your attention to that natural rhythm of your breath, just observe how the body is responding to your inhale and exhale. Noticing how the rib cage and the abdomen, they expand and contract with every inhale and every exhale. With each breath, using that exhale to let go of everything, everywhere. Allow your mind to wander to a place with complete peace and serenity. What would that environment be like? This can be a place that's as comforting as your home. It might even be somewhere more exotic, like a tropical forest, a beach, or a mountaintop. What would that place be like? It just brings you a complete sense of calmness and relaxation. Notice the details of this environment around you. Are you sitting in it? Are you walking through it? Maybe you're even laying down there. What does your skin feel while you're in this place? Maybe you feel the texture of the ground underneath you. Maybe you even feel the temperature of the air. Let this space be perfect for you in every way. Let this place be your own sanctuary. It only instills peace and calmness, comfort and security. Whether you're standing, sitting, or laying down, feel yourself breathing in this environment. Feeling the lungs fill completely as you inhale and emptying fully as you exhale. Allow your mind to tune into the small details of this environment. Really feeling any sensations against your body, or smelling any aromas that might be there. With your attention on your body and on your breath, observe your body as an entire unit. Recognizing where your mind was able to explore as you slowly come back into the environment that we're at together here in this studio. Our brain's perception of reality is fully dependent on the information that we give it. So you might have noticed that as you're going through this visualization, quite a bit of it can feel significantly real, especially as we start to tune into those details of the experience. As we all even move into spring, I might tell you to imagine that sun is hitting on your skin for the first time in months. And the likelihood is that you all have a experience that you can pull on, that you can actually feel and recall by that prompt. And this is a great power of our mind. No matter what's happening around us physically, or even what's happening to us emotionally, we can use the mind as a tool to not only redirect its focus, but to choose what our mind focuses on. majority of life will be an experience that we cannot control. But what we can control is this choice of our perception. Just as we chose to explore this happy, peaceful place, we can choose and explore different emotions, different perspectives. As you observe your body as an entire unit, bring your attention to the skin. Slowly place your hands on your abdomen. Take a moment to appreciate everything your body has done and will do. Appreciate your mind for taking the time to focus on your body today. And send gratitude to your heart for being that life force, giving you the experience of consciousness. You can take your time coming up, slowly bending the knees. And let this happen at your own pace. Whenever you're ready, you'll roll to your side and come up to a comfortable seated posture. Even though we're moving, coming back into a different reality that our mind might have taken us to, try to bring that sense of serenity and peace with you. We'll just take a few breaths here. Sitting nice and tall. Again, trying to bring that state of peacefulness with us. Whenever you're ready, you can start to open your eyes, still with the eyes nice and soft. You can grab your journal. We're just going to reflect a little bit on that experience that we just had. While it's fresh, write down some brief notes. So you're welcome to use the table, or you can hang out where you're at, whichever is most comfortable for you. The first question is, how do you feel after visiting your happy place? How do you feel after visiting your happy place? When are some moments in your life that you could use a retreat to your happy place to rebalance? When are some moments in your life that you could use a retreat to your happy place to rebalance? What can you do to remind yourself to visit it? What can you do to remind yourself to visit it? Again, you're just like last week, you can write as little or as much as you want, just reflecting on those questions. You're free to stay as long as you'd like. Whenever you feel prompted to move on with your day, you're welcome to do so. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today to practice. It's always such a pleasure to have you.